Well, boys and girls, it is time to get ready to go to Starfront. I'm Chad. This is the Easy Astro Images channel, and we are going to take the first steps to taking this entire setup and getting it to Starfront observatories in Texas to live its life under beautiful, dark skies, clear nights. I just can't wait. Since I started ordering this whole stuff, it was about 18 days ago, and we've not had a single night where we could do anything. Now we've had slowly but surely pieces have been coming in and everything. So we're going to take the scope here, talk about it all in some later videos, put it to the side, because the main thing today we are going to focus on is the very first initial things that we need to do to get ourselves ready. So step one is getting all of our connectivity and our power requirements kind of set up. So I've already had some of this stuff and some stuff I have started to add to the collection. So the first thing that we already had, of course, was a mini PC. So this is the MELE mini PC, which is powered on and hooked up and running. If we look here, this is the PC that's running here via Chrome Remote Desktop, which is pretty much the connectivity program that I used anyway, whether this thing is out in my driveway or if it's going to be in Texas. And by the way, a lot of this stuff applies whether you're doing this out 20 feet away and you don't want to go out in the cold or the hot or whatever. This is stuff that you can do right now. So we've done a couple things to the PC, but first of all, let me just show you. I built this MELE PC based off of an old build video from Patriot Astro. And, you know, I know that he was going through some family things. Hopefully one of these days we'll see him return to YouTube. So this is the one that I have. It's the Quieter 3. It's a fanless design, and you can see that I have added a heatsink to this and have also glued the heatsink with thermal compound glue. And believe me, this heatsink is working a lot better. Chad did some testing and showed that just setting the heatsink on top of it lowered the thermals on this pretty good. I know that Bray mentioned thermals briefly about how warm these get down in Texas, but he also said that the MELEs were performing better than the BEELINKs, which do have quality built into them as far as cooling and all that stuff. But the ASIair was still the most stable type of device that they had, ironically. So, and you know, the ASIair is a great product. If I had a second scope, maybe I would send down one down there with an ASIair. I don't know, but I'm going to have links to all this stuff below. Pretty much what everybody is using is they're using a version of the BEELINK at this point. The SER5 seems to be one of the most common. If you are a big baller, something like the SER8 here, you know, it gets you pretty much everything that you need as far as like all of the extra power and connectivity. And, you know, it's got cooling and all that stuff built into it. The biggest thing is just going to be overall processing speed and things like that. So I noticed with my MELE that I've never had like a crash because of anything running or anything. But like if I wanted to say open up Stellarium on it, browse, and then send a command, you know, Stellarium really chokes this thing up. And this thing is modded with 1 terabyte M.2 SSD drive. You can always just take any drive and plug it into the USB ports externally, even though you pretty much the preferred method, it seems like what everybody does is just to go ahead and set these things up like in Nina, where they're just going to be transferring your photos to a Google Drive and you're just going to be downloading them that way, quick and easy and simple. Again, you would do the same thing if it was parked outside. So I have links to all of this stuff down below if you want to go with any of that kind of stuff. The next thing that we need to talk about is basically power. So on the bench here, you're going to see this power strip. This is one of the CASA Wi-Fi remote switchable power strips. And the whole reason why you need one of these is you need redundant power and redundant ways to restart things. Just because, like anything at home that you might have from an electronics perspective, we can fix a lot of that stuff on the spot by simply switching it off and turning it back on. So that starts with this power supply. So I've got a link to it as well below. It is the CASA power supply, runs $43, and you hook it up to the app on your phone, and then you can individually turn one of these things on and off. So from what I can tell, the things that people usually plug into the power supply are your very root connections of things. So I'll have a power box that will have switchable USB ports, and then I will have one cable going to the PC, and then we'll have individual power for the power box and for the PC going to the actual power strip. And then if those decide to fail and we need to do a massive reboot and recycle, then you can do that simply from the app on your phone. It doesn't care where it's at as long as it's hooked up to Wi-Fi. And I'm sure there's kind of like some of the process during the installation where the guys will figure this out and wire everything up appropriately. So you could basically set up each individual power strip here with like a name and a label and all that kind of stuff. So the other thing with the remote PC that I did is I basically have it set up now where I went into the BIOS. So, a good handy thing to have on any remote setup that you have is some kind of like mini portable keyboard and mouse that you can always take out to your mount if you have any trouble. And of course, if you want to be a big baller, an extra $40, you can get like a little HDMI, like Raspberry Pi screen. So that way you can see what's going on if you have like failures with remote desktop. So once again, we will have that stuff linked in the description below. So the way this is all work now that I have everything set up here is I have this is my monitor and this is my MELE, and it's plugged in into home power. So if we just go on and look at the actual MELE here, what I'll do is I will just go ahead and we will shut it down. So that way it's shut down properly. And then we'll go ahead and switch back over to the camera here so you can take a look at what is going on. So it is all shut down, and you can see that we have a little red light right there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull up my CASA app on my phone, and I am just going to turn off the PC power port right here. So now you just saw that there is no power going on to that at all. So what we're going to do, so this is like your worst case fail-safe solution. Nobody's going to be around unless you put in a support ticket to go and turn on your computer and all that stuff. So the whole reason why you have this, and they do make more expensive systems like the digital logger and all that kind of stuff, but to me, this just seems to work just fine, and it is a fraction of the price. So all we got to do is just go ahead and click on that power button. We'll see that it comes to life, and now it is booting. And if we switch back over to the main PC, we can go ahead and pull up Google Remote Desktop, and we will see that it is already coming online, and we can go ahead and connect to it. And once it gets done with its boot up process and remote desktop is able to connect to it, then this will pop right back up. So probably take this thing a few minutes to kind of like get going. And I do have it set up where there's no password login or nothing like that. Try to take out as many variables to it as possible. And there you go. We are all set up. So I've went through on the MELE and I have like removed every single piece of equipment and or software and this and that I don't need. All of the old stuff that I've done. And if you look at the desktop here, you can kind of see that I have been going through and kind of rearranging and doing some things as far as updating software and all of that kind of stuff. So we've got our mains power situation basically figured out now. So, and the whole goal, in the end is to kind of duplicate something like this right here that I've been looking at on how they kind of like mount everything. So this looks like it's kind of like a Red Cat setup, and you can see that for the most part what they do is they kind of put the CASAs down here on the pier, and then your mini PC, and then there's obviously we can't see it on the other side, but there's more than likely a USB connection going up to here where there is some kind of like pocket power box or wanderer device or something like that, because you can see all of the bundle of cables and like dew heater cables and stuff like that, like being plugged into it. So over here on this device, they are running, it looks like one of the Eagle devices that is an all-in-one type of deal. And that obviously would be the like cleanest solution, but then you're all in for a heck of a lot more money. And then over here, this is like just a small refractor, and they've kind of got like the same thing going on over here. I actually think these people have a switch and a desktop hooked up to their computer, and these are the pictures that are off of what Starfront calls the mini pier. So I was thinking about reaching out to them and saying, hey, could you send me a couple pictures of just how some people have their 135 setups like mounted, and kind of how you guys have things on the pier, so I can just kind of get an idea of how to do it. But maybe what I'll do is do that and then send them pictures of mine. The way that I kind of have mine all set up right now is not perfectly ideal for me. We'll get into more of that in the future, but right now I just kind of wanted to go over the basics of everything. So we've got our mini PC all hooked up and run and updated, which I had already had and stuff. This heatsink really does work. There's a lot of heat coming off of that thing, so that's pretty cool. We've got the switchable power all running and all that stuff. So the next step is basically going to be to get everything kind of reworked and remounted on here. So I basically just kind of mounted all this up. This is using the ASTRO setup and then my CELESTRON dovetails that I always like to go with. So I'm waiting on some shorter cables. I'm waiting on a flat panel, which is not necessary, but now that I've had one with the Deep Sky Dad one, I don't want to ever be without one. So we've got one of the Wanderer ones coming. So I need to basically kind of shift this stuff, I think, a little bit forward, and that way the flat panel, I can decide if I want it to come off to the side or if I want it to flip down in front of the scope. There's nowhere to go. You can see we've got the 533 camera and the mini filter wheel. Before I would send it, I would definitely probably think about buying a new filter wheel and an extra set of all the filters, because right now all I have is HA and LRGB, which is fine. I don't really need to, I'm going to dark skies, right? So you really don't need to worry about shooting SHO, because, the whole reason why we are stuck and we shoot narrowband is because of light pollution. That's our biggest type of problem. You can see we got the EAF on there. Oh, and the new ZWO guide scope too, which is pretty cool. So in the next video, what we're going to do, which I'm going to start on right now, but for you, it'll be a day or two. We're going to start working on the Wanderer 3 box and talk about why I decided to go with this instead of like something like the Pegasus Ultimate. Mostly just because of the freaking features that are packed into this at way lower of a price. So I'm pretty stoked to get this thing fired up and see how it goes. This is the more advanced one compared to like your Pegasus Ultimate, your Pegasus Powerbox Extreme Advanced V2, which I used to use exclusively, but it doesn't have, again, the individual redundancies where you can switch on and off one power port or switch on and off one USB port or variably tune your actual dew heater power and frequencies and all that kind of stuff. Even though dew shouldn't be much of a problem down there, but I've seen a video from Mr. Astro Vagabond where he did have some dew issues. So we're going to have to definitely set this thing up with some dew straps and all that stuff, which I already have. And yeah, so that will be the next step. We will, at this point, be able to take all of this and go ahead and put it outside on the AM3, and we can just start, working here and there. I might actually do the Wanderer. We'll probably do the Wanderer configuration here on the bench, so that way you guys can take a look at it and we can all have fun together with that. So we will see you guys later. Appreciate each and every one of you. Peace.